degrees Celsius, but I think this one dissipates heat better after drying compared to MX4. But that's just my guess. After a few drops of this paste on the heatsink, I realized that spreading it was impossible. But then I remembered that nothing is impossible. So I started spreading it with inhuman enthusiasm anyway. That didn't last long. Just in case, I applied some around the edges for extra security. Because you can never have too much butter on your bread. Now, about installing the processor on this platform. It's actually very simple, even though at first glance it looks really complicated. Every part except the heatsink has arrows printed on it, as you can see here. So all you need to do is secure the processors in the specially trained CPU holder, making sure to follow the arrows, then attach the holder to the heatsink while also checking where the arrow on the socket is. Just imagine how the arrow on the right ends up on the left once the CPU is placed into the socket. I even pressed the CPUs down by hand to check how the thermal paste spread underneath. It spread pretty well. Everything is holding on tightly. Now it's best to wipe off fingerprints from the CPU contacts just to avoid a heart attack later when something doesn't work. By the way, these retention clips on the holder cover some contacts on the CPU, which means the processor might still function even if some pins don't have a perfect connection. Since I don't know how many turns each screw needs, I'll just tighten them the way they were before. First, tighten until resistance is felt, then 3 more turns with force. Now, imagine the level of anxiety if one of these memory modules doesn't work. How do you even find which one is faulty? So to be safe, I wiped down every RAM module with alcohol before installing it. Placing the RAM sticks is much easier than removing them, I noticed. By the way, as you may have noticed, I rarely upload videos, and that's because making content is kind of pain. First, you need to find something interesting, then negotiate the purchase, then actually buy it, then wait for it to arrive. So, if you'd like to help speed up my uploads, you can send me something for a review, just like Andre did. And it doesn't have to be anything expensive. I'm interested in rare hardware, very old tech, or, for example, top-tier PCs from past years. If you have something like that and don't mind sending it, you can reach out through my Gmail. The link can be found in the channel description. I even got an old monitor just for this server, and lost one elbow in the process. Why? Because this monitor has something that 90% of modern monitors don't, a VGA port. It's so ironic. The server costs a fortune, but apparently adding a modern port went against their religious beliefs. And in general, this thing has barely any ports. Only 3 USB ports, and not even all of them are USB 3.0. God, I suffered so much because of this. But hey, at least they managed to fit in 2 VGA ports. But let's not talk about the bad stuff. There's more of that coming ahead. This little brick, despite its modest size, weighs a whole 16 kilograms. Alright, let's plug everything in and I'll show you how it works. It powers on just like a regular PC with a button, but takes way longer. Ooh, listen to that roar. Good thing something immediately pops up on the screen when it turns on. At least we know the server is working. I'll head straight into the BIOS and crank up everything set for energy efficiency to maximum performance. Actually, I came here to disable the integrated GPU because when it's enabled, the external video output on the GPU we're about to install does not work. Apparently, you can't just plug in a disk here, so I had to reinstall the system on whatever drives were already in it. Now we can turn off the server. We're about to install the gaming GPU, but first, we need to deal with the noise problem when running the server without a cover. As you probably noticed, it gets insanely loud without the cover. This is intentional to prevent the server from overheating. And for that, we have a specially trained sensor. Here it is. When you short the contacts, the server thinks the cover is in place. When the contacts open, the fans go into battle mode. As you can imagine, neither I nor my neighbors want them going into battle mode, so I'll just flip the cover to keep the airflow correct and use my still alive bronze Xeon, which I conveniently bought as if I knew I'd need it for this purpose. The riser slot is right under the GPU, but as you can see, a fire hose is basically required to get this thing connected. Plugging it in is so convenient that I nearly broke my finger. Alright, half the work is done. What a mistake it was to think I'd never have to disassemble my PC again.